Hi, my name is Thomas Porcenio. I'm a senior at MDI High School. I'm the president of the MDI Just Eco team. This is Ayana Ishimura, junior, Matilda Allen, senior, and Sarogi Kumar, sophomore. We are here because we need to break the silence on climate change. In September, along with the hundreds of youth on MDI and millions of people worldwide, we went on strike to protest the lack of action of our local and national governments on climate change. We are here to present our first demand from that strike.
Imagine a bar harbor where the bar is permanently underwater, where there are no lobster boats or traps because of ocean acidification warming, where there are no whale sightings because they've all moved away, where there are no forests because it's too hot in the summer, and where Acadia National Park is on fire. This is my future if we do nothing.
Hello, my name is Lily, and I'm a senior at MDI High School. I consider myself blessed to have grown up on this beautiful island. The beauty of the great outdoors, starting with our own Acadia National Park, has always been a huge part of my life. We, as neighbors to this beautiful park, should be able to see more than anyone how much we have to lose if the climate crisis is allowed to continue wreaking havoc in the net. That this crisis will have on the fishing industries that has been a key part of our local economy for generations. Last year, I participated in the Eastern Maine Skippers Program, sponsored by the Maine Center for Coastal Fisheries, which is designed to educate and engage high school students in the local fishing economy. My team worked on strategies to combat green crab overpopulation, and through this, I was made abundantly aware of the damage that unchecked climate change will have on our local fishing industry. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than nearly every other part of the world's oceans. And as this happens, it has drastic effects on the species that live here. If waters continue to warm, lobster populations are predicted to shift some 200 miles north, putting them in Canada's waters and cutting lobster populations in the Gulf by 60% by 2050. This will put lobsters out of reach of many Maine fishermen and threatens to destroy an industry that is essential to this island's economy and is the livelihood of many members of our community. Also, warming waters and invasive green crabs are causing severe decline in clam and mussel populations. Once again, this greatly threatens the important shellfish industry, which in 2017 faced its smallest commercial harvest since 1930. It is important that this resolution be passed, not only to protect the beauty of our national park, but also because it threatens the very fiber of our local fishing economy. I understand that this resolution is bold, but it is also necessary. Climate change has become the grave emergency that it is today because of all the years in which we have refused to commit to taking necessary action. Bold is now our only option.
The declaration of a climate emergency is being demanded by our youth because the scientific evidence of the crisis is overwhelming. This crisis must be treated as an emergency by our elected officials who are responsible for our future. Young people throughout Down East Maine, the state, and the world are confronting how climate change threatens our future and that of our planet. We want to define concrete action steps to resolve the perils of our continued existence. The time has come for our elected officials to see the climate crisis for what it is, the most serious threat to our generation and civilization, and to act like it. We are already at 1 degree of warming worldwide. The politically determined 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming of the Paris Agreement is not a safe level of warming. Communities across Maine and the world are already being impacted by climate devastation. If the planet continues to warm, future generations on MDI will no longer be able to experience what past generations experienced here, or contribute to the local economy. Sea level in Bar Harbor is rising and accelerating, and the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than the rest of the oceans, driving lobster and other marine wildlife further north each year.
My name is Adam, Lawrence Adam Nusslein IV, and I've lived in Bar Harbor all my life. I'm a senior at MDI High School as well, and I'd like to tell a story. I want to talk to you about my dad, Lawrence Adam Nusslein III, or Larry. Some of you might know. He's in the Harbor Committee. He's worked for the Whale Watch since 1986 and has been a captain since 1992. Normally, they would have it in the area offshore, probably near Squid Ridge. About last 7 years, however, there's been a serious change. I don't know if any of you have been out on one of these trips, but whales can be identified by the marks in their back, or their tails. They're all unique. The whales that come back, however, have not done so in recent years. The only whales they can find now are in the Grand Nam Banks towards Nova Scotia, which is about 55 miles offshore, a 5-hour round trip. This means that while before the whale watch was able to do 3 trips a day, they can now only do 2. We've added another boat to compensate for this, but overall, it still costs more if you have to put more fuel in it, and still end up taking fewer passengers. This obviously means less revenue for the whale watch. There are theories as to why the whales are leaving. The laboratory current that feeds off of Maine may be warming and weakening, food's being driven away, and so on and so forth. But all these theories fail to look at the big issue, to acknowledge what we already know. It's the climate crisis. I know one thing too, and it affects my family. And because of it, my father's longtime career is being rapidly altered. So too is my own future, filled with the single woes.
We stand here as the future of our island community, children and students, and implore that the towns of Mount Desert Island, beginning with Bar Harbor, acknowledge the truth. This is a climate emergency. We are here to implore our parents, our family members, our community, and our council to declare a climate emergency, to make this resolution the framework for their response, and build a sustainable future for us on MDI. It's time to enter emergency mode together. We know we need a nationwide, worldwide mobilization of people and resources to deal with the climate emergency. We are calling on Bar Harbor to lead and take the first step, act locally, and advocate that all governments take action at emergency speed. In the face of this emergency, we are asking the Bar Harbor Town Council to commit to townwide decarbonization by 2030. The town of Bar Harbor will join the over 1,100 governments worldwide and over 50 local governments in the United States, including South Portland and Portland, and declaring a climate emergency and committing to emergency action. This resolution also calls upon all governments around the world to act now upon the climate emergency and for financial and legislative support from the state of Maine and the federal government required to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions as quickly as possible. The future of MDI depends on it.
As a first step, we are asking the town council to form a climate emergency task force to create and implement a climate mobilization action plan, the first ever climate plan in MDI, to help us get to zero emissions within a decade. The resolution dedicates at least 1% of the town budget to emergency climate action. We need real sustainable solutions that get us off of fossil fuels. Renewable energy like solar and wind, sustainable local transportation, and alternatives for heating our homes are the smallest step we can take right now. This resolution also calls for keeping the concerns of youth and local communities central to Bar Harbor's climate planning process. We need to educate our leaders and local communities on the climate emergency and invite them to actively participate in climate planning processes in order to advocate for their needs. We need everyone on board. We understand that this is much faster and much more comprehensive than the climate program proposed by our governor, who has pledged that Maine will have a carbon neutral economy by 2045. We recognize that Governor Mills' Climate Council and its goals are one of the most ambitious climate programs in the country. However, it is not enough, and it is not in alignment with the climate science. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, cutting global greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030 only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees Celsius and of warming, and avoiding catastrophic, potentially irreversible climate feedback loops. In the best case in Bar Harbor, this would mean unbearably hot summers, more frequent extreme weather disasters, and unpredictable precipitation. This is not safe. Would you get on a plane with a 50% chance of falling out of the sky? As Greta Thunberg said, you are failing us. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line.
The town of Bar Harbor has the opportunity to break the deadly silence around the climate emergency and encourage communities elsewhere to declare climate emergencies and commit to responding at emergency speed to restore a safe climate. The youth of Bar Harbor demand comprehensive local solutions that eliminate greenhouse gas emissions and build a fair economy. This resolution is the first step towards a sustainable MDI for everyone. The youth of Bar Harbor and Mount Desert Island need your support. We ask you to join us because we're out of time. Thank you.
we as counselors most of us have only had the past few days to look at this resolution. And so we're going to hear from individual counselors, and then make it path, because we have to decide, you know, how we're gonna do this. Are we gonna do this alone? Are we gonna require other people to join us? You know, it's not as simple as, you know, I mean, emotionally, I would vote yes tonight, because I represent many people here in the town, and a lot of them feel the same way as you do, and I feel the same ways that they do. But we need to reason this out, and then hopefully we will come up with a quick plan. But we're gonna listen to each counselor first, and who would like to start? Aaron, anybody? Go ahead, Matt.
I'll go ahead and go first. First of all, I'd like to say thank you all. Those were very, very eloquent, very impassioned words, and we need to do something. And a lot of the steps that are laid out in here are good starting points. I think one of the things that Jeff alluded to is, I know myself, we just got this over the weekend and have not really had time to dive in and look at all of this information, because there's a lot of amazingly well-researched information in here. And it's not fair for us to make a snap judgment one way or the other, because we want to make sure that we give the proper time to vet this. My hope is that we can actually take action on this at our next meeting. I don't want you to think for a minute that we're going to punt this far down the road. If we take time to read through all this, to research all this, to make an informed decision on this, it will, as far as I'm concerned, be done quickly. We're not looking to, we're not saying we're gonna sit on this for the next 6 months. I'd like to see us discuss this at our next meeting on December 3rd. So I would just like to say, personally, I hear you. I think that you make incredibly good points. There's a lot of information in here, and you guys are absolutely to be commended. It's one of the reasons that I'm happy to live here and happy to serve on this council, is because of the relationship I've had with many MDI students throughout the past decade. I think you guys are absolutely amazing. I think where positive change is going to come, it's going to come from you to us. So I very much appreciate you guys for coming tonight and for putting this together. This is really amazing work, and rest assured, we will take this absolutely seriously.
And I'd just like to say that myself and Gary, because I was we were a committee that met with the from the College of the Atlantic, so I had those ladies over there. So I had a little bit more time to think about it, and I had a discussion with the town manager, and one of the things that really popped up to us, we represent the town of Bar Harbor, but in reality, it's not only the town council, our budget that we have to deal with, but I think we really need to get everybody to partner. Jackson Lab, College of the Atlantic, any of the major employers in town, everybody has to get together, and I think that would be something that you guys are amazing. And we're not trying to escape anything. We are trying to deal with this as quickly as we possibly can, because like you said, and we all get, this is an international global emergency. So we need to make this broader, more people have to come in. And I am willing, and I speak for Gary, because we were the first two to meet with you, that we would probably be the most likely people to be on any kind of group like that. So with that said, what does anybody else have to say? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to tonight and issuing what amounts to a challenge to us, as we need that. Your cover memo of the resolution calls this a draft, so are you planning on changing language in this?
No.
This is it? Okay. And how do we communicate with you? Do you have a spokesperson, or, because I have a lot of questions that I'd love to find out more about, and I'm not sure how we go about communication between now and our next meeting. Is there a person or a couple of people we
Go
can?
ahead, come to the microphone.
Well, my name is Laura Berry. I'm a resident of Bar Harbor. I work for the college as well as a group called the Climate Mobilization. So I'm an alumni also of COA and a youth from 25. Myself and on your right, who is a student at COA, have been working with the high school students and the other students at COA have been working on this resolution, and we're happy to answer any questions about the text of the resolution itself.
Thank you. And does that suit you high school people that we communicate with, or we need somebody from your group as well?
We all work together. We're all talking to each other about it all the time. Thank you.
In order for this to be meaningful, I think it's going to require, certainly on my part, quite a bit of time to understand the implications of all this. Because it's easy to just say, we support this resolution, this is great, congratulations, kids. But if we're really going to do something about this, we have to evaluate the pieces of this and say, can we? And how do we afford it? And how do we design it? And all those kinds of questions. So I don't want to make a quick statement that I support all of this because I don't understand it yet. And Ms. Kumar, I think, is your name? Yes. You mentioned the governor's comments and some of the goals she set, but that it didn't meet some of the maybe international standards?
There's a committee, there's an intergovernmental climate change committee, and they have declared that their science shows that Governor Mills's goals of carbon neutral economy by 2045 isn't in line with what their science shows. So we need a more accelerated, more ambitious plan if we're gonna meet what the current science says we need to do.
So what I'm trying to figure out, how would we learn what are effective goals for our town, and how much can a town do by itself as opposed to a state or a country? And also what are the goals that are effective rather than creating some goals that really are not sufficient or whatever. I don't know how we do that.
Well, all the information from the intergovernmental group is available. It's publicly available information. That's how we got it for our presentation and for other resources. So that's all available through the internet. And as for goals, we're by far not the first town, even in Maine, to set goals like this. You know, Portland and South Portland are working on passing climate emergency resolutions as well. So there are resources you can reach out to.
If you ever had like a resource list, contact for those groups you mentioned, and as well as the comments you made tonight, that would be great. You can send them to the town and they'll get posted where we can all see. Great, thank you so much.
Aaron?
I agree with everything that both Jill and Matt have said here. I think that back in the 70s, when I was a kid in Southern California, these were all issues we were also looking at the same time. This was before the beaches had hypodermic needles and all that kind of great stuff on it. The worst thing that you found on the beach was the guy who ended up there from the night before. So our beaches have changed in my lifetime, tremendously in my lifetime. While I understand the urgency and agree with it, coming from a town municipal point of view, I just want to make sure that what we put in place and the things that you guys have recommended are also things that can work here. Not just, oh yeah, this sounds great. I don't want to give this lip service at all. So I want to make sure that a lot of the things you proposed can actually be put into place. If not, how can they be modified so that as a town, we can reach the goals that you guys are asking us to reach. I would love to be able to work with all of you and all of you to be able to do that in a timely manner and make sure that your concerns are addressed and that not only your future generations, but I hear you as the generation before you. I hear you guys and I hear what you're saying.
outside of the Bar Harbor Town Council's capability to realistically address. I think that some aspects of it come across aggressively. I think the word demand has been used. I think a better approach would be a more collaborative approach. There are a lot of mentions of different stakeholders in here, but there are some egregious omissions. I just read it for the marked it up. I didn't see any mention of the private sector. You don't. One thing I've learned in my brief experience in the political sphere, if you want to call it that, is you don't get anything done by trying to squash your opponents. You have to engage all the stakeholders, even those that you may not feel team, and you have to find ways to make sure at least some aspects of everybody's concerns get addressed. And I think or anyone who's ever spoken to me about this has the authority to raise their hand and affirm that that's a very strong statement. The whole thing to me is too strong for the forum within which it's being presented. I'm not sure this is the right forum. I don't think it's being presented to all the right stakeholders, and
should be net zero by 2030. Like that is a big step, and we don't know exactly how we're going to get there, but we know that it's completely technologically and financially viable to power any of our schools and our town operations, any business and any home on MDI with the sun. That's currently possible. Now, heating and transportation are big nuts to crack. Figuring out how to run our sewer plant, our water operation, all those things, those are going to be big challenges, but we're up to it, and we have to do it. The other thing that I want to point out is that I think that the staff misread the resolution in terms of what it would cost. There was one of the resolves is to designate at least 1% of the annual budget to accelerate greenhouse gas emissions reductions and to hire staff to coordinate implementation of the Bar Harbor Climate Mobilization Action Plan. Stan just presented the council with a memo that showed what it would cost to do both of those things separately. I believe that the students meant that 1% would cover both of those things. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's not the 140,000 for two positions plus another 1%. It's a total 1% of the budget that would cover any staff requirements and other out-of-pocket expenses that the town would have. I think that it does make sense for this resolution to come to this town because Bar Harbor, more than almost any other town in the state, has the financial resources to do this. I know that there are taxpayers that have already sent us letters saying they don't want their taxes to go up 1%, but we can figure out with $1.5 million in parking revenues and $1 million in cruise ship revenues how to offset other expenses to enable us to do this most important work. And the final thing I want to say is that I started thinking after I got this resolution from the students about what climate change is going to cost this town if we don't do anything about it. And you can say that the town of Bar Harbor is not going to turn climate change around. It's going to take the state and the nation and the international community. But we're already making changes here. When MDI High School put solar panels on the roof, the principal and Climate to Thrive got calls from all over the state and out of Maine from students and principals and townspeople that wanted to do the same thing. People look at MDI as a model, and I think that we've already had a big impact. But let me just tell you some of the costs that the town's going to incur directly from climate change. Our combined sewage overflow is going to be an issue that the EPA is going to make us address. It's going to cost $10 million to fix that, and that's because of the intense storm events generated by climate change. We're looking at washouts to the shore path and storm damage to roads, culverts, and other infrastructure from rising sea levels. That's going to cost millions of dollars. The lost productivity and healthcare costs from Lyme disease, add that up. Many of you have personal experience with Lyme. That's a climate change generated disease. forest fires, from red pine destruction from invasive species enabled by climate change and extreme weather and winds. Just think what another fire like the Fire of 47 would do to this island now with the level of development that we have here. It'd look like California. There's nothing that says that just because Maine is a little wetter than California, that we're not susceptible to the kind of fires that are going to feed off those dead red pines, and we've had droughts, not this year, but the 2 previous years. A fire could be devastating, costing millions of dollars in not just damage to the forest, but to adjacent communities and homes. Climate-induced bomb cyclones. You know those storms the last 2 Octobers that set down and took out power across the state? At our farm, Bar Harbor Farm, we had one of our high tunnels get lifted up by one of those 80-mile-an-hour winds and smash. That was a $15,000 loss to our farm, and that's just one of the things that could happen. The damages from power outages, the losses from that are unknown. Heavy winter storm damages from the huge amounts of snow that we're getting because of climate change, and the costs and road maintenance and potential business closures. We've been allocating more money to salt and road maintenance the last couple of years. And finally, the lobster industry that the students mentioned. So when you add all these up, it's millions and millions, tens of millions in Bar Harbor, probably hundreds of millions over time. So for the students to ask that we spend $200,000 a year on this is a drop in the bucket in terms of the investment that it's going to take. And what we found at Climate to Thrive is that we can leverage our dollars tremendously. The high school put 1,500 panels on the roof at no cash outlay to the school, and that's already saving them money. The town can do the same thing. So yes, we should be educating ourselves. We should be looking at these issues. We should be working with the students, but we shouldn't be delaying. And I'm all for continuing to talk about it, but I'm also feeling very strongly that we need to take action at our next meeting.
So my question for this body is, I seriously feel if we were to take a vote on this today, that the vote would fail. So how do we, without delay, I'm with you, Gary, I think we need to discuss this at the next meeting. What steps do we lay out between now and our next meeting for either you and Jeff, or you, Jeff and Cornell, or other counselors to meet with the students, to meet with the Climate to Thrive, to meet with COA? We need to lay out steps right now so that we're ready for our next meeting. So I'm looking for how we think we should go about that. 'Cause I want this taken up at our next meeting, and I don't want to come into our next meeting with great. We did a lot of work, but we still have too many questions to vote on this. So I would like to find a way for us to work with the Climate to Thrive, work with the students to take the meat of this resolution and formulate it into something that will get an affirmative vote from this council. So I'd like to see how we can lay out those steps to get the ball rolling, start the ball rolling tonight, and have something that we can vote on that will get an affirmative vote at our next meeting.
Sorry.
I thought you had your hand up.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
Mistake. I thought somebody had asked me a question or something. Anyway, I think that I just have to respond to a few things that have been said. So I think we're getting involved in a very emotional discussion that a lot of people feel really strongly about, but we can't lose track of certain fundamental pragmatic concerns. Gary, you mentioned cruise and parking money. We can't use it, it's not legal.
You can use it to offset other expenses that the town has.
Potentially to an extent, but it's not a literal, you can't draw that literal line. It's not legal. To say that the discussion has never taken place, it's in our goals, I believe, and has been, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but we actually asked in our goal setting session, has anything been done to try to address this? And it was explained that the town looked at trying to purchase an electric police vehicle, and for whatever reason it was determined that it could not be done. If if we can't find a way to purchase an electric police vehicle, how are we gonna reach out to the President of the United States? And, it just seems like baby steps might help us get to bigger steps better at some point in the future when we're actually capable of making them. I just worry that we're going down the path of an emotional discussion, and the last time that happened, and I feel like we made an maybe impetuous decision on the plastic bag ban, somebody showed up 1 or 2 meetings later and explained, oh, by the way, your plastic bags that get thrown in the dump, they get recycled now. And we could have known that if we had taken a little more time to explore it, and then we could have talked about, does it actually make sense to ban plastic bags? Transportation of paper bags requires more fuel than plastic bags because they're heavier, that's bad for the environment. We never had that discussion. Maybe it actually would have been more climate friendly to, ironically, continue using plastic bags and have them recycled at this brand new facility. We don't know the answer to that, and I could be completely wrong, but I could be right too because we never had the conversation. Again, in terms of how this could be done aside from coming and making demands of the town council, I own thousands of square feet of roofs in Bar Harbor, Maine. Nobody's ever come and talked to me about why should I put solar panels on my roof. I'd love to know if that would help me in some way, help the community. I don't know the answer to that question. Nobody's ever approached me with it. Somebody should go talk to Evan Salvatore about putting solar panels on all his roofs if nobody has. I'm not aware that I can't, in my case I can say nobody's come to me, in his case I can't. He owns a lot more roofs than I do. David Witham, has anybody spoken to these people? I feel like that might be a more effective approach rather than coming in here and stating things that are likely to scare those folks. And again, I think it's important to, I feel like we get into these conversations and it's like some people are considered to be, you know, enlightened and understand, and anybody who has any questions about it, like I was trying to speak a minute ago and somebody yelled at me from outside the room. It's true. I didn't say it wasn't true, but that's not a civil, constructive discussion. We need to respect each other's opinions. We need to acknowledge that not everybody, even people with common interests. I love Bar Harbor. I've lived in Bar Harbor my whole life. Bar Harbor is my life. I am completely invested in it in a way that is sometimes, to an extent that you could argue is, you know, can be rattling at times, that the amount I've invested in Bar Harbor and stake my future personally in Bar Harbor. I care about Bar Harbor. I'm trying to do the best I can for Bar Harbor, and somebody is, you know, responding that way from outside the room in a way that I would never respond to anybody that way, no matter how much I disagree with them. So, I don't think this is good. Every time something like this happens where it gets into this really emotional, heated thing, and we are pressured to make really fast decisions before we have full conversations with all the people we should be talking to and consider whether this is the right forum, the right methodology, the right language, I'm disappointed that this continues to take place in this way.
Well, I'd like to make a few comments. Okay, what I said earlier after I spoke, I think we're only one part of the solution, the town council. We need, I would suggest, taking your work and putting together a summit, you know, and probably the College of the Atlantic. I mean, that's jumping right off the plate right now. We need all the big stakeholders, Jackson Laboratory, anybody who is involved with massive infrastructure that's here on this island should get together. We haven't hired a new public works director. It would be probably the person that would help us map out future changes and buying trucks, and she's not here. She hopefully will be approved tonight and he'll be here in December. But I think for this to happen, I mean, I get where Stephen's coming from, and we're all saying the same thing. We need to make a plan that will work. The emotion's great, because that's gonna get us across the finish line. But we need to get all the stakeholders together. And I think are you the president or the chair of your group? I don't understand the structure of your group. Do you have a board of directors, or is it just a group of people that are concerned?
At COA or in general?
Yeah, please come up here. I'm gonna pick on you because I know you're the boss.
No, that's fine. Are you talking about at College of the Atlantic specifically?
I'm talking about the whole climate change idea here in Bar Harbor and on Mount Desert Island?
Sure, yeah, so I think we're a couple separate groups at the moment. There's the MDI High School
Yep.
High School Eco Team, and then there's also a climate justice organization on College of the Atlantic's campus called Earth in Brackets.
I'm
And
sorry, what's it called?
it's called Earth in Brackets. So far we've just been working collaboratively between our two groups.
But doesn't it seem to you that this, I mean, for this to work, there has to be a nucleus? And it
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I think we're starting some of those conversations. We've started them at College of the Atlantic, talking to the administration. I know the students have been talking about starting conversations at the high school as well with the administration.
Well, I think the
But I
urgen-
think you're right in terms of.
I mean, I think the urgency that we're hearing and seeing is that if we're gonna do something, we gotta do it together. We can't just take the voters' money and say, here, without a plan. We're doing stuff right now, they're changing out all of the lights in town to LED, that's gonna save money. We are, we're looking, every time we try to fix something, we try to do it differently without a public works director. This particular person seems to be well-versed and, looking down the road into the future, how things work, and I'm very much looking forward to her to show up. But someone needs to get these people together. I volunteered my time, and I know Gary will be there too. We just can't run out and hire 2 employees, because it doesn't happen like that. I mean,
Sure.
it would take months, maybe
Yeah.
a year.
No, and I think that's part of the point of the climate emergency task force that we talk about in the resolution. And to Councilor Costin, your comments about including everyone, I wholeheartedly agree, and I agree with you as well that
Well,
this
could
is.
you call a summit? I mean, you need help in the local papers, the local television stations, the whole media, force out there that you can get. And the College of Atlantic would be a perfect place for that to happen because of its reputation. And it would be the ground zero and for the whole island and even the whole coast of Maine and the rest of, and we can work with the state, but we need to get together with the people who work with the infrastructure of these places, who know how to save money by changing to solar, who have the influence to do that. And so we can talk all at once and bring in experts who can, look into what else can be done. Because it's scary, but that's the only way we're gonna get this done. We just can't vote to increase it. We give you $200,000 and say, come back and let us know what you did. We need to do, if you wanna do something, we need to do that. And I think that's, Karen, go ahead.
I'd like to address Steve and some of the things that you said. I think what Matt was talking about was exactly what you mean. Let's take those steps. What do we need to do to build the plan, to bring everybody who's involved in this resolution and in this idea together? Whether they've already been given an invitation to the table or whether they need one. Whether it's public sector or whether it's private sector. This isn't a problem for one group, this isn't a problem for one person, this is a problem for all of us. We're all here, it affects all of us and the next generation. And then the next generation if there is one. So these are all things that have to be looked at. I think the idea of forming some type of plan to look at, if a summit, I think that's a great idea. Let's have a conversation sometime in the next 2 weeks to see, because as has been mentioned a little bit here and there by each of us, there are policies that this town council has in place, that our ordinances have in place to address some of this. The solar farm is a great one. The idea that, all of the buildings that the municipality builds has to be net zero. So that was something that we put in place a few years ago, before I was on council. So those are, those little bits here and there are things that we're trying to put together. But I understand from your resolution, you wanna really kind of tie it to goals. Great, it's basic strategic planning, awesome, totally for that. Let's get a big meeting, let's get the group, I'm gonna say it wrong. The Earth in Brackets at COA, the Eco Team at the high school, Climate to Thrive, the independent private sectors. Let's get some of those big players, if we can, in the next 2 weeks. It might be bigger than something we can do in the next 2 weeks. And just get some ideas on the table. What's already being done? What are our goals? And then how do we make up the difference in the middle? Does that sound like a good idea? Like a solid way to move this forward to where we wanna go? I don't wanna make it so that this is months and months on the table, so I'd like to kind of set a deadline to it.
Please,
Thank you. I completely agree about the need to involve all of the stakeholders, all of the folks who are going to be involved in, also including College of the Atlantic, JAX, et cetera. I think that what's really significant about this resolution is that it sets out a plan to do exactly that. We want to form a task force to make the plan, but we want the commitment from the folks who are saying that this is an emergency, agreeing with our students, with our youth, to make that commitment to set up that plan. What that task force looks like is up to us, absolutely. We have said we love representatives from youth, from different organizations that we've named, but that doesn't preclude any other organizations from being part of that process. But, part of this also, we're right, Bar Harbor is not alone. We have the opportunity to lead, and declaring a climate emergency, passing a resolution that puts us on record is leadership, and that lets us have that voice in speaking to the state of Maine, to the federal government, to other towns, that is important. So I think I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight of the fact that we need to acknowledge this in a public way, and the Bar Harbor Town Council is our public forum in order to acknowledge things like this. So we can, in one way or another, in the next few weeks, I've heard from some of the councilors that they're interested in moving forward, declare the climate emergency, acknowledge that it's happening, and set out a process for how to start dealing with it. And that, if that includes a summit, if that includes a task force, that's wonderful. But I think in working with the students, what I'm hearing from them is just wanting that recognition from the folks who they're looking to secure a sustainable future for.
And that's exactly why I would like to see us, just take a couple of weeks before our next meeting to work on something. What I don't want to see, and what unintentionally I fear will happen if we, a summit's a great idea, but if we start to say, well, we need to engage stakeholders, but if we wait to make major decisions until we do all of that, we're just going to do the same thing that's happened for the last 20 years. We're just going to keep pushing it down the road a little bit farther and a little bit farther and a little bit farther. While I cannot support this as it's written tonight, I hope that within the next 2 weeks we can come up with something that we can support. I don't want to see this pushed down a month, 2 months, 2 years. I think we can take definite action soon that addresses these concerns, that starts the ball rolling on fixing all of this. I really don't want to see us continually do the same thing that has been done for years, which is, it's a problem, but it's not a big enough problem to deal with now. It is a big enough problem to deal with now, and we have to deal with it in a responsible way. So I really would like to see us have something in our next meeting that we can vote on, whether it's a form of this resolution, whether it is us acknowledging a climate emergency without having all of the steps laid out yet, but acknowledging the problem. I don't know exactly what that entails, but we need to start. We can't just keep pushing this down the road forever.
It would be helpful.
Stephen was next, I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna say one more thing. I understand that what is desired by the folks in this room is urgent, fast, decisive action. And I understand that it would seem to make sense that when you want urgent, decisive action on an important issue, you ask for an emergency to be declared, but just think about this. Declaring an emergency is maybe threatening to someone who doesn't feel that there's an emergency. If you want someone to declare an emergency and there's someone else who doesn't feel that the thing you want to declare an emergency is an emergency, they may feel threatened that if they try to express that to you, that you're not going to be open to their opinion, that it's not, even if they may agree with you to a large extent, if they don't, emergency really draws a line, a very sharp, hard line. And when you need buy-in from a mass group of people with a lot of different personal agendas personal opinions, different exposures to different facts, readings, whatever, which at some point, if you guys want to progress in the way that I think you want to progress, I think you're going to need buy-in from folks that you're probably not thinking are folks that you're going to be needing to work with, probably not folks you consider necessarily your allies. Not everybody that's important in the world is people that always, are the most obvious that agree with us. And I just would urge you to consider that maybe the declaration of an emergency is not the right way to go, because it's dramatic, it can be threatening to folks who may not view the situation to be quite as dramatic as you feel it is. And I think that it would be wise to try to engage as many people as possible in the most practical way possible, as opposed to trying to aggressively push something in a way that could frighten some stakeholders and people that might otherwise wish to work with you in many ways.
Gary?
I think it would be helpful if counselors could point out specific issues that you have with basically all the resolve, because those are the actionable points in this thing, and then those can be addressed and discussed at the December 3rd meeting. If we don't know exactly what your concerns are, it'll be hard to bring something acceptable back. And
You want that now or by email before?
I think you can communicate it to
You can
Chair?
go to the chair.
Could I just ask that if you have concerns about the specific resolve over the next 2 days, because we really only have a week, because you need 2 weeks, and next week is a short week, so agendas go out on Wednesday. So you've got 7 days, so if you can get your concerns, and Gary and Jeff, myself could meet with Ms. Wright and whoever else you'd like, and perhaps a board member will come to Pride if you want. Anyway, have a meeting by the end of the week to work on some language to get back to them.
Just,
Hold on, let me just finish one thing. I'll get you in a second. We'll probably have to do it by Friday, because we have meetings every day this week except for Friday. Is that something that you can do?
up till Friday morning. I'm leaving the holiday on Friday.
And ladies, I know you have school, you had a problem last time, but what time of the day can you meet?
On Friday.
What time? He's
Until
leaving
11
at the end
a.m.
of the day.
I'd have to do this Friday morning.
Friday morning? What time?
Friday morning works for us. Does it work for?
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work.
Okay,
Yeah,
now
this
at
is
9
important.
o'clock at Cornell's office, does that work for you?
Yeah, it can't take 12.
Right. Yeah, I would, bring the big guns, okay? So 9 o'clock, Cornell's office, and if any of the high school kids, one or two, because we can't get a million people. We got the fire chief here.
Would. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry?
What time? Are you gonna anything that works?
You guys figure it out.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll talk.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll
Bo,
talk amongst
please come
ourselves.
to the microphone.
Hi, my name's Bo Green, and I'm from Bar Harbor. Wow, listening to this discussion, I can't help but respond to you, Stephen. I gotta just say, I don't know you at all, but I know that you don't get this. That's crystal clear. This is an emergency. It's not an opinion whether this is an emergency. The science has been done for 40 years. We have known about this since the 80s. It has been pushed and pushed and pushed. It's like people don't have an opinion about whether the earth is round. Just because you didn't want to think that way, that was fact. This is fact. There's no dispute at all anywhere in the world about the facts of climate change and what they're going to do here and everywhere else. That's not negotiable. So if we don't embrace that, we're never going to get anywhere. I mean, that is just not an opinion. Okay? These kids standing here. A whole bunch of these are my students, and they should be doing calculus homework like I was doing over there. But you know what? These kids can't friggin' sleep at night because they're so afraid of their future. And you think that it shouldn't be emotional? You're damn right it should be emotional. There's nothing more emotional in the entire existence of the universe than climate change. It has to be emotional, and it has to be acknowledged as an emergency so that the response to it is with emergency input and effort. This is not about people just getting all worked up and I don't really feel the same way about it. That just is mind-boggling. You want to know the scientists? They're in here, Stephen. They're in here. All these brains. There's one. These guys are scientists. They have done all the research. They have read everything, way more than you guys and I have. They know the facts. They've learned them. They are way smarter than all of us. These brains are unbelievable. And their passion is unbelievable because you know what? They want to live. They want to live here. They want to make good with the world. And they're worried about having kids. People are choosing not to have kids because they're so afraid of what's coming. And we know it's coming. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just pretend that, well, that's your opinion? I do have a lot of opinions about things. I'll be the first to admit. But climate change is not about anybody for pats on the back. You don't get it. Because they are more altruistic than any of us old people have ever considered being. They want to save the world. And that is literal. That's literal. And if we don't acknowledge that, we are in big, big trouble.
We can't find out that it's perceived like this. I don't think. Let's say Joe Street at this point.
Say, Joe, you
Yeah,
just want to make a
I think
comment?
it's good. That's it. Okay, yeah, actually, Stephen was first.
No, I was just pointing to Jill having her hand up.
Jill?
Okay, I am not in favor of tabling the whole thing tonight, because I do think, that there is a climate emergency, and I have no problem making that statement tonight. What I have a problem with this as it's presented is, the town staff has all kinds of responsibilities and that are very important to people who live here, and that's all going on a daily basis. And so the question is, with some of the things laid out in this, it does not take into account all the other very important stuff that have police protection and the fire department and all those other things that have to happen. So that's my reservation about the action steps, if you will, that you've laid out. I don't have any problem tonight passing an, I don't know what you want to call it, a statement or resolve that says the climate emergency is a crisis that threatens us. And then the piece in here that kind of jumps out at me is the development of a climate mobilization action plan. I think that's the action item from tonight. But I think in order to put meaningful flesh on that bone, we need some time to think about those parts and pieces, what we can do, how we work that out and all that. So I'd be happy tonight to pass the initial concept of the resolution that says, this is an emergency, and we intend to create a climate mobilization action plan in this town. Is that a motion?
We have to
there's a
withdraw the
motion.
first motion. Withdraw the motion.
I will, I'll withdraw the motion.
Does the second agree?
Yep, second
Okay,
agrees.
the new motion is?
The motion is, that the town of Bar Harbor, I guess one would have to say the town council, declares that a climate and ecological emergency, threatens our community, and that we intend to develop a climate mobilization action plan to deal with that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, so to develop a plan, who's doing this? I assume since you are having the town council direct that it's gonna be town staff.
don't assume that. I hear what you're saying, which is what I just addressed about all the other things we expect of you all in the course of your workday. So I don't know that it needs to be town staff, at least at the beginning. It could be the meeting Jeff was talking about, and people who agreed to do that. It can be, you know, some conglomeration of those of us, because there's a lot of stuff we have to think about before we get to the point of saying a plan means we're gonna do solar panels here, we're gonna do this over there. To me, a plan is like, do we have a baseline? Do we know what we use in this town for fuels and things, and where were we 5 years ago, and, you know, what's a realistic goal for 5 years from now? So I think that kind of thinking can be done by a group of concerned citizens, and we seem to have an abundance of those here. So I think we can get started on an initial framework of what might be the elements of a plan before we start using up staff time. How am I doing, Bruno?
Well, it sounds like you're gonna use up staff time to prepare the plan.
Well, I think initially,
Do we not, if you pass that motion, then we don't need to do the resolution, because we're working on a plan to
Well,
address
that-
the crisis.
That motion, I guess, would be the resolution that we're making tonight, Mr. Woodruff.
Okay, so we don't need to put it on 12/3, so we don't need to meet quickly by Friday. I mean, we can start meeting by Friday, but I don't have to have, some product back by next Wednesday.
It is my opinion, and my opinion only, that at the point where this begins to involve significant amounts of staff, time and energy, that's something we have to discuss and work out with you, whether that's doable or not. But I think there's a lot we can do before we get to that point.
is that agreeable?
Yeah, I guess.
Does the second agree?
Could you restate the motion, just so we, I think I think it's a good one, Jill.
The motion is that the town council of Bar Harbor declares that a climate emergency exists and threatens our community, and that it is the intention that the community create a climate mobilization action plan to respond.
Okay, hold on 1 second, there's
Can-
a second.
Can you add in there that it will be done within the next 60 days?
Creating a plan?
That the group will meet within the next 60 days?
Oh, yeah, I think the group ought to meet before, you know, in like 4 weeks. I understand
So
the
the next
holidays
30
create.
We're gonna meet Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're Friday's
Okay.
the start.
I just wanted to make sure that there's no, that isn't off the table. I wanna make sure that this isn't like, oh yeah, we're gonna do
No,
this,
no,
no,
but-
like, there's a date for it. So yes.
We're
I
adding
second
60
that.
days.
No, no,
30 days.
We have the third,
30 days?
Yeah.
30 days means yes.
okay.
You're saying
And I
30
second
days
that.
to get the group together.
Yep.
So we're both in agreement. Matt?
I mean, that takes care of some of my question. One thing I liked about tabling to a specific date was just that we had a specific date, and I just didn't wanna see, that in the 30 days, makes me a little bit more comfortable. I just didn't wanna see this, great, we're declaring an emergency, and now we're just gonna wait, and maybe we'll get to it, maybe we'll, so I realize that that there's gonna be a meeting on Friday, but I just, you know, I don't want us to be playing lip service. I really want us to make sure that we're gonna follow through on this, and I think that motion, with the change does that.
Okay, do you all agree on the motion? And the second agrees with the change? It's quick, we're gonna vote, so quickly,
Just a clarifying question on the climate mobilization action plan, would that include a commitment to decarbonize by December 31st, 2020, or
No.
2030?
well, not
sorry.
at this point,
No.
we're gonna meet, and we're gonna have further discussion on what to do.
And how to do it.
And how to do it.
I don't know what it takes to do that. That's why I can't commit to that.
But the
But I
will,
think that
will
should
to
be
do
part
it
of
is
this
there.
plan we develop.
Okay. So we're getting an emergency tonight. Okay, so, all those in favor of the motion as stated? Aye, opposed? Motion passes. Okay.